I didn't tell the police everything that happened that week. Not because I was trying to hide something, but because I knew they wouldn't believe me. How do you explain hearing footsteps inside your house every single night, when every door is locked, every window is shut, and every security camera shows an empty hallway? Even I started questioning my own sanity. My name is Mason. I'm 29 years old, and at the time this happened, I had just inherited my grandmother's house after she passed away. It wasn't a creepy mansion or some abandoned farmhouse. It was a perfectly ordinary 2-story home on a quiet street in Indiana. My grandmother had lived there for nearly 40 years, and after her funeral, I decided to move in instead of selling it. Everyone thought I was lucky. 3 bedrooms, large backyard, no mortgage. What they didn't know was that the house had been empty for almost 8 months before I moved in. The first few days were uneventful. I spent my time unpacking boxes, repainting walls, and trying to erase the feeling that I was living inside someone else's memories. Every room reminded me of my grandmother. The floral curtain she refused to replace, the grandfather clock that chimed every hour, the old rocking chair by the front window. At night, though, the house felt different. Older houses make noises. Wood expands, pipes groan, floors creak. I kept telling myself that. Then came the first knock. 3 slow taps. Knock, knock, knock. I looked at my phone. 2:41 a.m. Half asleep, I walked downstairs and looked through the peephole. Nothing. The porch light illuminated an empty driveway. No cars, no people, no movement. I even opened the front door. The cool night air rushed inside. Silence. I shrugged, locked the door, and went back upstairs. The same thing happened the following night. Same time. Same 3 knocks. Again, nobody. By the 4th night, I stopped answering. If it was teenagers playing a prank, they'd eventually get bored. Instead, the knocking stopped. For exactly 2 days. I remember feeling relieved. Maybe it really had been kids. Maybe they moved on. Then Saturday arrived. Around noon, my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, knocked on my door. She had lived across from my grandmother for over 20 years. She handed me a blueberry pie and smiled. "It's nice seeing someone in this house again." "Thank you." She hesitated before walking away. "Did your grandmother ever tell you about the attic?" I frowned. "No." She forced a smile. "Never mind." Before I could ask another question, she walked back across the street. That conversation stayed in my head all day. The attic. I'd never even been up there. The entrance was in the hallway ceiling. That evening, curiosity got the better of me. I pulled down the attic ladder and climbed into the darkness with a flashlight. Dust floated through the air. Boxes filled with old Christmas decorations, suitcases, broken furniture. Nothing unusual. Until I noticed something that didn't belong. Near the far wall sat a small camping mattress. Not old, not dusty. It looked recently used. Next to it was an empty plastic water bottle, a granola bar wrapper, and a flashlight with fresh batteries. My stomach tightened. Someone had been up here recently. I rushed downstairs and searched the entire house. Every closet, every room, nothing. I convinced myself maybe my grandmother had hired someone to help around the house before she passed away. Maybe they had left it behind. It sounded ridiculous, but it was the only explanation I had. That night, I locked every window, every door. I even pushed a dining chair against the front entrance, just to calm my nerves. Around 2:41 a.m., I woke to footsteps, not knocking, footsteps, directly above my bedroom. Slow, measured, 1 step, pause, another step. The sound came from the attic. I grabbed my phone. The security app showed every downstairs camera. Nothing. I didn't have cameras upstairs yet. For nearly 10 minutes, the footsteps continued, then stopped. I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, I bought 2 indoor security cameras. One pointed toward the hallway. The other faced the attic ladder. If someone was getting inside, I'd know. The first night with cameras, nothing happened. The second, nothing. By the 3rd night, I began feeling embarrassed. Maybe stress really was making me imagine things. Then, at exactly 2:41, my phone vibrated. Motion detected. I opened the live feed. The hallway camera showed nothing, no person, no movement. Yet the motion alert continued flashing. My eyes drifted upward. The attic ladder. It was moving. Not opening completely, just shaking, as though someone above it was carefully testing whether it would make noise. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. Then, the movement stopped. No one came down. No one appeared. Only silence. I called the police. 2 officers searched the entire house, including the attic. Again, nothing. One officer smiled politely. Probably a raccoon. I wanted to believe him. I really did. Until the following afternoon, when I discovered every single granola wrapper, water bottle, camping mattress, and flashlight had completely disappeared. Someone had cleaned the attic while I was asleep. After the police left, I didn't feel safer. I felt watched. Not the kind of feeling you get after a horror movie. The kind where your instincts keep whispering, "Don't turn your back." I barely slept that week. Every little sound made me reach for my phone. Then Thursday afternoon, I received a call from an electrician I'd hired to replace some old wiring. He sounded confused. "Did someone else already work on your electrical panel?" "No. Someone's been splicing into the lines." "What do you mean?" "It looks like a separate circuit was added years ago. It doesn't power any room in the house." He followed the wiring through the basement ceiling. Instead of ending inside the walls, it disappeared behind a section of old wooden shelving. The shelves weren't built into the house. Someone had installed them afterward. When we pulled them away, we found a narrow wooden door no larger than a closet. I had lived there almost 3 weeks and never noticed it. There was no knob, only a recessed metal latch. The electrician looked at me. "You know what's behind this?" I shook my head. He slowly pulled it open. Cold air drifted out. A narrow passage stretched into darkness. Concrete walls, barely shoulder width. It wasn't part of the basement. It had been hidden inside the foundation. We followed the passage with flashlights. About 20 feet in, it opened into a cramped room. There was no furniture, only blankets, canned food, empty water bottles, battery packs, a portable radio. Someone had been living there, recently. The electrician backed away. "I'm calling the police." Detectives arrived within 20 minutes. Forensic technicians photographed everything. One detective asked me if anything had gone missing. I thought about it. Nothing valuable. No money, no electronics. Just food. I remembered buying 12 bottles of water. Only 8 remained. Milk disappeared faster than it should have. Bread, fruit, things I blamed on forgetting. The detective nodded slowly. "Sometimes they don't steal valuables. They steal routine." "What does that mean?" "They survive by taking so little that homeowners don't notice." My stomach turned. Someone hadn't been breaking into my house. Someone had been sharing it, without my knowledge. The room contained no fingerprints, no identification, nothing useful. Whoever lived there knew exactly what to leave behind. Before leaving, one detective gave me advice I'd never forget. "If you hear anything tonight, leave immediately. Don't investigate." That evening, I packed an overnight bag. I intended to stay in a hotel, but as I walked toward the front door, the power went out. Every light, every appliance. Darkness. Outside, the entire neighborhood still had electricity. Only my house was black. Then, 3 slow knocks, not at the front door, from inside the walls. Knock, knock, knock. The sound traveled through the hallway, almost like someone tapping on the wood from behind it. My phone flashlight shook in my hand. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my keys and ran outside. As I reached my truck, I looked back. An upstairs bedroom curtain moved, very slowly. Someone was standing behind it, watching me leave. Police searched the house again that night. This time they brought thermal imaging equipment. Every room appeared empty, until one officer aimed the camera toward the basement. A faint heat signature flashed, then disappeared. They searched for nearly an hour. Nothing. The hidden room was empty, fresh, as if someone had left only moments earlier. One detective wasn't convinced. He requested city records for the property. 2 days later he called me. "You need to come to the station." Old blueprints revealed something shocking. The hidden passage wasn't unique to my house. Nearly every home on my block had been built by the same contractor in 1968. During construction, maintenance corridors were added beneath several houses for utility access. Most owners never knew they existed. Many entrances had been sealed. Mine hadn't. Someone familiar with the neighborhood had likely been using those forgotten passages for years. Not just my house. Potentially several houses. Search teams inspected the connected tunnels. Most were collapsed. One extended almost 200 feet beneath 3 properties before ending in a blocked exit near an abandoned storm drain. Inside, they found recent footprints, food wrappers, blankets, but whoever had been living there escaped before officers arrived. No identity, no arrest, nothing. I sold the house 3 months later. People ask if I regret it. Not for a second. Sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't a ghost or a monster. It's discovering that an ordinary home can keep extraordinary secrets. To this day, I still check every room before I go to bed. Not because I expect to find someone, but because I know how easily someone can hide in the places we never think to look. I tried to move on. The new house was 20 miles away. Different neighborhood, different county, different locks. I told myself it was over. For a while, I actually believed it. The nightmares became less frequent. I stopped waking up at every little creak. Eventually, life felt normal again. Then, almost 6 months after I sold the old house, I received a call from Detective Morales. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number. When I did, the first thing he said was, "We finally found him." I stood up from my kitchen table. What happened? There was a break-in last night. My stomach tightened. At my old house? No. He paused. 2 streets away. According to the detective, the new homeowners had called 911 after hearing strange noises beneath their basement floor. Officers searched the property but couldn't find anyone. Before leaving, one of them noticed fresh mud on a utility hatch behind the house. They opened it. Inside were the same maintenance tunnels. This time, they didn't stop where the old blueprints ended. A recent cave-in had opened another section that hadn't appeared on any official records. The tunnel stretched beneath several more homes before ending inside an abandoned pumping station near the edge of town. That's where they found him. He didn't run. He didn't fight. He simply sat on an old folding chair under a battery-powered lantern as officers walked in. The detective said it looked as though he had been expecting them. The place was disturbing. Shelves built from scrap wood, stacks of canned food, water filters, old camping equipment, hand-drawn maps of the tunnel network, and dozens of notebooks. Those notebooks explained everything. He wasn't homeless. He had once worked for the construction company that helped install underground utility corridors decades earlier. When the company shut down, he became obsessed with the abandoned network. Over the years, he slowly expanded hidden rooms using salvaged lumber and stolen tools. He memorized every entrance, every sealed hatch, every crawl space. Whenever a house sat empty for even a few days, he slipped inside through forgotten access points to collect supplies. Sometimes he stayed for hours, sometimes for weeks. He almost never stole valuables. Food, water, batteries, soap. Those were easier to replace without anyone noticing. The detective told me something that made my skin crawl. "We found your address." "What do you mean?" "In one of the notebooks." He described a page with my street address written across the top. Underneath were simple observations. Lives alone. Sleeps upstairs. Leaves for work at 7:18. Returns around 5:40. Orders takeout on Fridays. Checks the mailbox after dinner. Never checks the basement. My hands started shaking. He hadn't just been hiding beneath my house. He had been studying me, for weeks, maybe longer. The detective continued. "Your house wasn't chosen randomly. He preferred homes with predictable routines, predictable people." That sentence stayed with me more than anything else. Predictable people. The investigators believed the nightly sounds I heard weren't accidents. Whenever he needed to know whether I was awake, he would tap inside the walls. If I investigated one part of the house, he knew where I wasn't. He learned my habits one reaction at a time. The electrician showing up when he did probably saved my life. If that hidden room had remained undiscovered, who knows how much longer someone would have been living beneath me. Months? Years? Maybe until I moved away without ever knowing. Before ending the call, Detective Morales said one last thing. The strange knocking stopped after we arrested him. It was meant to reassure me. Instead, it reminded me that every sound I'd heard had come from a real person. Not imagination, not ghosts, not an old house settling. A man. only a few feet away. Months later, I drove past the old neighborhood one final time. The house looked completely ordinary. Fresh paint, kids riding bicycles nearby, a delivery truck parked across the street. No one would ever guess what had existed beneath it. I didn't stop. Some places deserve to stay in the rearview mirror. People often ask what I learned from everything that happened. It's simple. We spend so much time locking our doors and checking our windows that we forget to think about the spaces we never see. Sometimes the greatest danger isn't trying to get into your home. Sometimes it's already there, waiting for you to believe you're alone.